Yeah, so I just wanted to connect with everyone for a couple reasons. One is obviously in the next couple weeks, trading deadline, there's going to be a lot of topics, and certainly want to make myself available today as well as probably next Monday out in Arizona, and just try to keep people abreast on kind of where things are going. But as you all can imagine, there'll be very little details we share other than, as we start looking at this, we know the season hasn't gone as planned. Certainly going to look at how we can take some of the players we have on this team and turn it into future talent. And as we try to explore that, it can take many different turns. But obviously, my staff's going to be very busy in the next few weeks trying to find ways to improve this team as we look to the future. And I also wanted to address Genesis Cabrera. We did designate him today. And really, we just felt from a baseball standpoint, it was just time for a change of scenery. And then you may have also saw that we signed Ryan Cabrera, and ultimately we were trying to do that so we have just some veteran experience, because right now we are running up some younger players from Memphis and just trying to add somebody that has some experience as we look to move forward. So at this time, I'm happy to take a few questions.
What do you think the issue was with Genesis?
I think the big thing, I don't think he loved the role he was in, and ultimately I felt like as we were trying to get this to work, we kept hitting some headwinds. So now he'll get that opportunity to do it somewhere else.
Well, was that strictly a performance issue, or?
Yeah, and I think it was also just on a personal issue, meaning I just think he felt like he deserves higher leverage innings and didn't always feel like he was getting it. Now, part of that's how a team's playing and when you can actually use someone who's available, and I don't know if every player always looks at it with that kind of understanding.
Well, does what happened in the next 2 weeks have anything to do on what you will actually do at the deadline?
In terms of how we play, you mean?
Yes.
Just performance, wins, losses, change our direction? I would say probably not at this point. I think where we are and where we are in the standings is going to make it very difficult to change that. It's not to say that if we won 8 straight, you might take a pause in how you think about something. But I would say from our standpoint on how we're thinking about using our energy and time right now, it won't change.
Mo, DePera is a Major League deal. He's to your active roster now.
Say that again?
DePera is a Major League deal. He goes to your active roster?
Yes, he goes active today.
Will he be here today? Will he be available?
I believe he reported, yes.
Okay.
What's next for O'Neill? He's here now. He's not active yet?
We'll probably make that decision after tonight's game. So really it's twofold, right? One is he'll either be activated tomorrow or we'll contemplate doing a rehab assignment. But high probability gets activated tomorrow.
You identified Cabrera as that veteran presence. How do you plan on using him on the field, though? What do you think his role will be?
I mean, we just need innings out of the bullpen right now. We've had a lot of inconsistency, and we're just trying to fill that. And obviously, when you create your own hole, meaning designating someone, then you just try to fill it quick.
No, your franchise 15 straight winning seasons, history of strong second halves, to not be trying to compete. How foreign is that to you guys?
Well, it's definitely different. I don't know if I'd use the phrase not trying to compete. I mean, obviously, if there are people that are getting moved out of here, that's just going to create more opportunity for someone else, right? And you have seen teams that make changes and end up doing better. So I feel like where this club's at right now, we just know it's not working intact, and so we do know we have to make some changes.
Is there a chance in the next couple of weeks, your free agents to be, you'll negotiate with them to try to lock them up?
I don't want to speculate on that. Obviously, it's not a long list to figure out who we'd be talking to and whatnot. But, I think for our standpoint right now, it's going to be how we can improve and get more talented in the future.
Well, how similar are the deals that you might explore to what you usually do in the winter?
I think right now it's a little different at the moment because, you're dealing with people that you're doing trades where teams are looking to compete for a postseason run now, versus I think a lot of times when you look at off-season trades, it's a lot more longer-term type thought process.
When you look at what you want to acquire, and you talk about in the future, how near the future are you talking?
Well, hopefully sooner rather than later. We're not looking just for simply A-ball depth. If we can find talent that we think can help emerge in 2024, that would be great. 2025, I wouldn't rule that out either, but 2026 seems a long way away.
So how much do you have to get a feeling for your free agents to be, how much they want to be here, how much it's going to take?
I think we have a pretty good idea of what all that looks like.
How about beyond free agents to be? Do you look at the current roster and kind of say, he fits here, he doesn't fit? How much do you have to look at what you have, even like your starting 8, and see who's going to fit?
Yeah, well, obviously we know we have some depth in some places, and so that's something that if we felt like that was a smart deal to make, we would consider.
In London, you mentioned that you would hope the Cardinals are not allowed or able to rebuild. It certainly sounds like that's the route you're not taking. So you would expect this club to be competitive again in 24?
That's the hope. Obviously, a lot has to happen for that, and clearly that's not going to be solely defined as what happens in the next 2 weeks. It'll clearly be like how active we can be in the free agent market this offseason, as well as potentially what types of deals we might be able to do that as well.
Are you at all close to bringing Mason Wynn here and just saying, here's the job for the next couple of months?
I love what we're seeing out of him right now, but in terms of playing time, it'd be very difficult at this point. But maybe in early August that might be revisited, but right now I'd say it'd be difficult.
What's the conversation like with someone like Ali when the shift does go from this year to 2024?
Well, I think you guys understand. I mean, we talk every day. I mean, we all sort of understand where we are, and now it's, how can we improve upon what we have? We know this current group isn't working as a core, so we're going to try to shake it up and get back to winning.
Same along those lines. What's the conversation like with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt in those terms?
I think they understand where we are too right now. And it's not like a quick fix. It's not like we can go out and just trade for someone that's going to change our trajectory at this point. But I think when you look at our everyday club, it's an exciting team to still have in place. And so, can we augment enough pitching this offseason to change the outcome of what we saw this year? That'll be our goal.
To get something, you have to give up something. I think sometimes fans lose sight of that. You have some tough decisions to make. Is that how you look at this process that you're getting into?
Trades are always difficult. These guys on a personal level, it's always challenging, but I think everybody would agree behind those doors that what we have going right now is not working.
Well, the record being what it is, were you tempted to try to do something earlier to shake it up, to add to this team?
We kicked a lot of tires to try, but we weren't ever really able to get anything that made a lot of sense for us at that point.
Well, when you look at the players you have in the organization now and what the season looks like from August 2nd through the end of the year, do you have enough innings in your organization with players you have in-house to cover, or will you have to add even through that kind of short-term addition?
Obviously, I think in that view, it would seem a little challenging at this point.
You've done deals in the past to also kind of shake up the room, whether it was the Lackey deal. Is there any need to do that, or is this simply about getting better talent? Do you think there's any chemistry kind of involved in this?
I think it's a complicated question that doesn't have like one simple answer, but I feel like where we are now, that's probably not the path we're going to take.
Well, was there something you kind of identify as what led to the bottom dropping out this season?
I think it's a combination of lots of things. I think when you look back at our spring training, we had 18 people participating in the WBC. I don't think we ever really sort of gelled that way. I think from a starting pitching standpoint, Waino got hurt, which that could have happened in spring, so I'm not blaming that. I think Miles Michaelis didn't get the innings to truly prepare, so there was a slow start there. I think having 2/3 of your outfield not working together had an effect, and I think 3/4 of your infield had an effect. And then I also think the expectations were so high for this team, or like normal, but when we got off to that slow start, I just really feel like a lot of people started pressing. And once you do that, you always have to remind yourself this is a human game and a human element, and I think that just compounded some of our issues. And then, of course, not having the depth when you lose 2/5 of your rotation right away, or not producing as you thought, that definitely had an adverse effect. And then, of course, Matt's got off to a slow start. Nice to see him throwing well now, but I think it was just a combination of things that led to where we are. But that's why we're still pretty excited about our everyday club. That if we can, fix the pitching situation, we still think there's a lot to believe in.
So how does that inform what you try to do now to kind of turn around and to contend quicker than to go in and rebuild?
I think it really comes down to what is potentially you're able to trade for, right? When you ask the question, does that mean you're looking for really top end A-ball talent, or are you hoping it's more double A or triple A?
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy for me to say, of course we want it as close as possible, and hopefully competing and helping this club next year. But we also have to be realistic on what all this may look like. And I assure you, we have a lot of things that we've been thinking about, looking at, studying, and not every possible deal we'll do will address that immediate need.
No, you got Miles locked up in the off season, but you still have 3/5 of your rotation wide open. How much does that have to be your focus?
Well, I definitely think we're going to treat the trading deadline as pitching, right? That's not to say we're going to ignore a position player that may be just uber great, and so we have to be cognizant of that. But I think the goal would be to address as much pitching as possible.
Do you need to make any deals that might free up some salary from next year so that you can spend it on pitching?
Not really.
In the off season?
I mean, we have a lot coming off the books, so I think for free agents, when you think about that, I think we'll have dollars.
It's hard to think of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's hard to think of you filling out a rotation without an addition via free agents.
Oh, it'd be impossible. Yeah, unless we make incredible trades that somehow address that, but I don't see that even when I squint.
Is it fair to say Goldschmidt are not going anywhere? Do they have those assurances?
I don't have any intentions of trading anybody like them. But again, when you have, if you're willing to listen on anything, you have to understand. But I doubt that would happen in any scenario at this point. But not ruling anything out at the moment. But I mean, both those guys have complete no trades, and I think from their standpoint, they really just want to know directionally what we look like for next year.
We can all identify the guys who are going to be free agents, but there's also 3 major league second basemen in that room. There's a glut of outfielder DH types. There's 3 catchers who don't have a lot of spot for next year. Do you have to address some of those redundancies as well as part of this?
Not necessarily this 2 weeks, but again, not knowing what the playbook's going to exactly look like over the next 14 days, I think we have to remain open-minded. We have to approach this as doing what we think is best for the organization. But, I don't want people in this room behind me to think everybody's up for grabs, because it's not. I mean, we do like a lot of the pieces we have, but we understand that there is going to have to be some addition for us to compete next year.
Or did it take you a while to get to this point?
I mean, we're being patient, but, I could have been impatient a month ago. It's not going to change how the industry looks at the next 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be fair to say then that this trade deadline is just the beginning of what you hope to be a very long process of getting you ready for 24?
I mean, I think it's a big step when you think about 2024, but obviously it's going to put pressure on the off season as well.
Mo, as you look toward 2024, how do you view the catching situation? Is it Contreras and you stick with him after a rough debut here in many ways, or do you revisit that perhaps with the time of an off season? How do you look at where the catcher is moving forward?
Yeah, I think we'll table that till the off season. Obviously, when we look back at it in the short term now, there's some things that need to change. I think, short view is kind of nice, what we're seeing out of Cabrera right now, which is good. But, ultimately, I think when we start thinking about 2024, some of those things will have to be more addressed in the offseason.
Does thinking about 24 mean looking at Cabrera much more often over the next couple of months?
It depends on how some of the things happen with our roster. But, clearly we do want to, we've liked what we've seen in the short trio.
Where does Tyler fit in when he returns?
He will likely be our everyday left fielder. In other words, that would be the plan to have him out there every day.
And then what's the trickle down of that? You've had guys in and out of DH. I mean, I know you wanted to do Jordan in DH, but then Brendan couldn't throw.
Right. So to answer O'Neill, I can. To answer the other, I can't, because it's going to depend on when others can come back, when they can throw. But try to get Walker playing time, obviously Newt playing time, of course, trying to figure out what to do with Dylan. I mean, these are similar challenges we faced in late April. But obviously Tyler's worked himself back to get here, and So we're going to give them that opportunity.
John, you said pitching a second ago. You've got 2 pitchers who are going to be free agents. How much do you want those guys back?
Well, we hope we can get them back. But, right now might not be the moment we get that to happen. But, I look at where the season is, and this is a unique place for the Cardinals. And, I think our goal is just to see what we can do in the return.
When you were talking about the things that kind of haven't worked out for you this season, when does depth become an obstacle? Have there been times when your depth has become a bit of a riddle as opposed to a strength?
I think you and I spoke about this in San Francisco, though. Like yes, but when you think about it in terms of why it becomes a little bit of a puzzle to put together, it's like when think back to April when people weren't hitting their strides or trying to get going. The one thing that individuals like to do to get their strides is what? Play. And then when people are pressing and not, when they play, not going 2 for 4, instead they're going over 4, you have that natural reaction to be like, okay, I'm going to sit that person. And so I do think when you look back at that time period, trying to get guys on track, that's a balancing act. And unfortunately, we just never really got it going. Now, remember, we did make a few moves to try to free up some things. In May, we did play better. We started to see a little light, but then injuries happened. And that was probably a point I should have touched on, but because if you look at Tyler O'Neill and Lars Nootbaar in aggregate, that probably missed the season. And so, yes, depth is great because you could plug and play, but those were 2 guys that we were counting on to have very impactful years.
How is that influencing the development of some young players too? Burleson and Jordan, obviously top of the mind.
I think
developing at this level.
It's hard, and I think they're getting forced to be asked to do things maybe that in a perfect world they wouldn't have been. And I think in Jordan's case, I think we would all agree, from an offensive standpoint, he's obviously fitting in. I think from a defensive standpoint, there's been some hurdles or challenges. And Burley, wasn't a natural outfielder either. Was drafted as a first baseman and is being thrusted in there because of the potential offensive upside. And, so from just a, ideal standpoint, I think a lot of things that have occurred with the injuries and so forth have thrusted guys into places that maybe they wouldn't have had to have been.
John, what's your level of concern with Tommy Edmonds' wrist injury? It didn't heal after the All-Star break. Is there a level of concern there?
Not yet. I mean, I was aware that this could take a little bit of time. I mean, we were also hoping it could have been quicker, but right now I think we can be patient.
Where are you right now with your view of pitching development? You guys have obviously had need and cycled through a lot of options, but haven't had anyone click. Hudson, is that back? Liberatore, Stahl. Where are you right now?
Yeah, I'm still bullish. I still think McGreevy is throwing well. It's good to see Graceffo's back. And Tink's an exciting arm. But when you say development, what needs to happen, and I think in anybody, when you say a Liberatore Stalls, we need to take a hard look at how we think about his curriculum. Clearly the curriculum we're going with right now is not working, so something has to change. Now, when I say that, it's not as simple as hey, coach, fix this, right? I mean, it also takes 2 to tango, and so the player has to recognize change is needed as well.
To follow up on Derek's earlier question about the injuries and the depth, how has that affected your ability as an organization to make some assessments and evaluations of some of these guys as you're looking at the trade deadline and these maybe some of the players that will be in discussions? I mean, you feel confident about the feeling you have for these players considering the situations we talked about earlier?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a vague question, and I don't want to get into specifics, so I'm not inviting you to do that, but I think we understand who are the individuals that we're thinking about trading and feel like if we were to make a trade, we have a feel for them.
You mentioned in 2024 you hope you can be back in it. How much of what the offense has done this season has believe that belief? I mean, you guys, despite the pitching struggles, the offense looks like one of the better
everyday
ones.
club I think is good, right? I think that's definitely one of our strengths. Again, you got to realize that the emotional or the mental part of this. When you're down 4-0 after the first 2 days in a row, what does that feel like? And yet these guys are still competing, and I think that's super encouraging. So I hope that, in the end, that we have a good group to build around, and that's exciting. But we have to augment this with pitching. I mean, you can't have a repeat of this. I do think even if we were to shouldn't even be quoted here, but if we were to replay the season, it probably wouldn't be as bad as it is, but we can't. And we're not going to go in the offseason thinking that's a good strategy.
Does your model have to change as far as chasing pitching, as far as payroll for pitching? And if you try to trade for pitching, it's going to cost your top prospect.
I mean, I think from a payroll standpoint, we should have some room for growth there, or resources that are available. Part of that's with just people coming off. But I think the other part of that is how we think about how we evaluate pitchers is something that we are taking a hard look at upstairs.
Is that a strikeout?
More swing and miss versus ground ball type of thought will definitely be baked into future thinking.
Do you also have to look at what you're willing, the question is what you're willing to spend, but what you're willing to risk on pitching? Pitching is pretty volatile, and the price of even uncertain pitchers is
I think the volatility isn't just solely on performance, though. It's also on the medical.
Right.
When you're in the free agent market, getting a player passed through the medical gauntlet is challenging.
Do you have to change how you look at that, like the lottery ticket signings?
You got to be careful on how one says that, because what you don't want to do is then go out and have that blow up on you. So I think the process we have in place can be tweaked, but I don't think I would redo it.
When you talk about organizationally transitioning to a stronger swing and miss perspective, the pitchers that you've acquired over the last 4 or 5 years have maybe not been in that bucket. So then what do you do from a development perspective with the raw material that you have? Is it we hope we can shape these guys, or?
No, I think you are who you are. So I don't think this is going to happen overnight. I'm just saying upstairs we've had an internal discussion about it. We recognize how we are. I mean, we also were a team that were really good defensively. We understood how to shift. Having pitchers that allowed the ball to be put in play, especially on the ground, was something we benefited from. But now with no longer being able to shift, I think when people ask about how we're thinking about it, I think that's something we're going to take a look at. I mean, change is good if it helps you, and that's we're not so stubborn or arrogant to say no, we're just going to keep doing our system and hope for a better outcome. We understand that there has been a shift, and we'll try to adjust to it.
When you look at Babbitt, you guys are far and away ahead of everybody else. Does that maybe the ban on shifts affected you guys more than any other team?
I mean, I don't know. No one wants me to talk about bad luck or things should be better because we hit the ball hard. I mean, I think that narrative sort of played itself out now. I mean, I do think that's a good skill when people hit the ball hard. It's unfortunate to hit it at someone, but net, I don't think we're going to rethink our hitting.
Yeah.
I think the point is we do like the collection of hitters we have because they do have a common theme and they hit the ball hard and often.
I mean, like Palante, who's a ground ball, gets the ball on the ground, but there's not a shift in it.
No, that's what I think that, of course, we think there's a correlation between how our defense was being used versus how they can no longer be used.
Like you said, obviously Goldie and Nolan understand where you guys are and all that. What you're telling us, obviously, is not going to be news to them. I'm sure they've heard it. What were those conversations like? What was that process
like?
Those are all
private.
Okay.
I mean, I've talked to a lot of players.
I mean, generally, is the attitude, we get it, or is the attitude,
Again, I'll keep those private.
With some of the pitching prospects in the system, even if you dealt with injuries, Christopher would have to come back. How much has that kind of affected timeline for some of these?
Well, I mean, just looking at our 40-man, right? You have guys that are on the 40-man at Memphis hurt. That's put a lot of pressure on us. And then you think about our Rule 5 pick. You think about Seninga. I mean, these are guys that we thought could do some things for us this year, but just haven't. And they were of the model of more of the swing and miss, and we were hoping to be able to inject that, and it hasn't. So usually when you're having a year like this, it's probably just more than one thing. And I do think it's a collection of a lot of things that went wrong. And the one thing I can tell you is we're definitely going to take a hard look at ourselves, and if there's something we can learn from this or glean from it, we're going to. And I'm encouraged that we are having these types of conversations upstairs, and we know we don't want to repeat this.
when you look at, you mentioned the 49 guys, Zuniga, Connor Thomas, are either of those guys expected to be able to contribute this year?
I think so.
Okay.
I hope so.
You had 5 starters under contract. Is the bullpen the area where maybe depth could have been added? Or I heard you on TV the other day, you said if you were looking at it and doing things over.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. I think I would add more starting pitching. I would add more bullpen. Like we thought the Rule 5 was going to help us in the bullpen. We thought Zuniga was going to help us in the bullpen. We thought Dakota Hudson might be someone that could, give us some innings in the rotation. Okay, so a lot of the decisions we made just haven't worked out. A, from injury, or B, from performance. And you've heard me talk before. I mean, you never have enough depth. I mean, we always know that. But clearly this year it screamed it.
Mo, did you run into issues where you couldn't afford innings or promise innings to starters who were free agents?
There were times.
The opportunity wasn't there.
Right.
How do you change that sales pitch?
We have 3 open spots at the moment.
Okay, so it's kind of changed.
We not at the moment, but will. Please delete that. In time.
You have 3 unknowns for 2020.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more sort of opportunity available to open slots.
So getting ahead of it for this year, could you have made a different sales pitch?
I guess I could have been dishonest, right? I'll just give it to you, but that wouldn't have been right.
Does Zach factor into the conversation as a starter?
What?
Zach Thompson figure into the conversation as a starter?
I met with Zach. I'll share this with you yesterday, and we basically just told him the remainder of the year you're likely going to be used out of the bullpen, or will be used out of the bullpen, and then I'll meet with you at the end of the season. Staff will meet with you and just decide how you want to prepare for next year. But right now, just worry about that.
When we talk about developing pitchers, how does that, with using Zach as an example, work? Because for the last 12 months, he's been told a variety of different things and expected to adjust to a variety of different roles.
I think, look, when he got optioned out, the message was pretty simple. We're going to try to stretch you out and try to create some depth as a starter. I think on a personal level, I feel like he would have rather heard that back in October and not when you're getting sent down at the end of April or May. And that's understandable. And so as we look at 2024, any pitcher that wants interest in competing for a rotational spot, we just have to be very clear on what that looks like as we go into camp next year.